Nazi Germany fought two simultaneous wars: the military war against the Allies and the genocidal war against the Jews. It launched the first on September 1st, 1939, riding roughshod over Poland and daring the British and French to protest. Americans argued for more than 2 years over whether to join the conflict before the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor ended the debate. The Second War began in 1941, when a decade of racial and religious persecution morphed into a plan to annihilate the Nazis' innocent enemies. The U.S. government confirmed the ongoing mass murder in 1942, and for more than a year, Americans, to the extent they were paying attention, debated how and whether to respond. Finally, in 1944, the United States began fighting the Second War. On a drizzly Sunday in the middle of January, John Paley, a young assistant to the Secretary of the Treasury, walked from his office to the White House at lunchtime, and when he emerged, the United States had entered the war against the Nazi extermination of European Jews. When the war in Europe ended 17 months later, tens of thousands of people, Jewish and non-Jewish, were alive due to the outcome of Paley's meeting. A new government agency, the War Refugee Board, WRB, had been born. Paley and his colleagues never became famous and spent the rest of their lives hearing and agreeing that the United States should have done more to help save the Jews of Europe. At the same time, few people ever knew what the War Refugee Board had actually done. The odds that day, January 16, 1944, were stacked against John Paley. President Franklin Roosevelt had the flu. Rumors flew around official Washington about his ill health, a topic of particular concern, because the Democratic National Committee met that weekend to debate nominating him for an unprecedented fourth term. The president felt physically weak and postponed things he wasn't up to doing. Paley, a tall Midwesterner with a deep voice and light brown hair already starting to recede, had never had an official White House meeting, even though he had worked in Washington for a decade, rising through the ranks at the Treasury Department. Since 1940, when he was just 31, Paley had overseen foreign funds control, responsible for keeping billions of dollars out of the hands of America's enemies. With a staff of nearly 1,500, Foreign Funds Control also supervised the small amounts of relief money sent from the United States into Europe. This did not exactly qualify Paley or any of his colleagues as humanitarian aid specialists. Many people, including military officials, believed the United States could only truly help the victims of the Nazis and their collaborators by winning the war as soon as possible. Everything else was a distraction and a diversion of resources. Paley thought they could do more than just fight militarily. But would Roosevelt? Most worryingly, Paley's news would undoubtedly upset the president. His friends had been lying to him, and Paley, a man Roosevelt couldn't have picked out of a lineup, had the proof. Paley's plan, an incredibly risky one, was to argue that if the president did not act immediately and follow the Treasury Department's advice, his legacy as a defender of the downtrodden would be forever marred. Millions had already died, but millions of lives were still at stake. Paley felt convinced that some could still be saved, but only if Roosevelt acted quickly. Paley entered the White House, stomped his shoes clean, hung up his hat and coat, still damp with wintry drizzle, and climbed the stairs to the president's private study. He readied himself for the most important meeting of his life.